again, and thank you for choosing to watch another instalment from my YouTube channel here at Benidorm and beyond. For those of you who have already found my channel, I do apologise, but you may have seen this vlog already. But have just this week had a copyright claim on the audio part of it. Since I feel the music really makes the video, I've had to take the whole video down and remake it again using different music. Today's vlog takes you on a walk from Benidorm's main road of the Avenida de Comunitat Valencia, or the top road as it's known locally amongst the expats, which becomes obvious why if you look on a map, as it pretty much sits at the top of Benidorm and by many of its major entrances to the resort, and then down and along the wilderness alley of Gypsy Lane, as we all call it, or Camí Afagador de Soria, as is its official and rather more wordy title. We started by passing the Fun Factory nightclub, which is now permanently closed, and then on the other side of the road we saw the Coon nightclub and its space Terrazza, which still opens in the high summer season and for special events such as Halloween and New Year's Eve. We also see the signage for Karting Benidorm, where you can zoom around on their go-kart track from €24 for 8 minutes with special prices for groups, and their own branded limo also available to pick you up from your holiday accommodation. Just after the 1 minute mark at the old Torremolinos Steakhouse restaurant, we took a right into Gypsy Lane itself, where to our left we then see an overgrown area that used to house a drive-in car wash facility, but this was demolished some time ago now. With this lane not officially supposed to be used by anyone except those who have the authority to do so, but in reality it's a very handy shortcut for vehicles wanting to get from this top road down to the Rincon de Loix, and as you will see as you watch, there is plenty of traffic using it still, as I found out by the steady honking of car and motorbike horns letting me know that they were there as I tried to walk along and film at the same time. At about the 2.5 minute mark, we see a small side road which leads on to Quai Esperanto, where you can find the popular 4-star hotels of the Sandos Benidorm Suites and the Flamingo Beach Resort, but we'll continue downwards where we'll eventually end up right by the large open space that houses Benidorm's outdoor market and opposite the Evermar apartments. The bi-weekly outdoor market is of course seen as a great morning out by many, including the local residents who come down to fill up their wheeled shopping trolleys full of fresh fruit, veg and flowers on a regular basis, as well as the thousands of tourists who flock here as well, who like poking around for a bargain or two, or maybe an unusual souvenir or fake handbag or t-shirt to take home with them. The long-term future of the market is uncertain, however, as this whole area from the top road down to the Carretera de Albir, where the market sits opposite a handful of bars, is set to be part of a huge multi-million euro regeneration project, as I'm sure many of you are aware, and indeed which I've reported on several times myself here at Benidorm and beyond. With the old mini golf Florida at the edge of the market site already having been pulled down and cleared away over a year ago, providing additional free parking spaces in this busy part of town, this whole area is going to be razed to the ground over time, with a green light having been given for the very last phase of the project to go ahead last June, with the Ministry of Agriculture, Environment, Climate Change and Rural Development now being satisfied that the plan meets all their requirements. The project will completely envelop the space where the market currently sits, which after all does remain empty for the majority of the week, and as far as I can see, no announcements have still been made as to where it will move to, if indeed it will reappear at all, as such a large empty space would be hard to find in this already hugely developed resort. If you want to find out about some of Benidorm's most popular hotels, then why not check out my great series of vlogs giving you an unbiased look inside and out. Just search YouTube, Fly on the Wall, followed by the name of the hotel you're looking for, and all the info will be at your fingertips. It's that simple. Whilst most of the stall holders set up at a different market in the area every day of the week anyway, this large coming together in Benidorm is certainly quite a spectacle, and especially easy for holidaymakers to find in this popular tourist zone. And it also helps keep a lot of the nearby bars and restaurants ticking over, with a huge extra influx of customers on both Wednesdays and Sundays. You can obviously find other markets in Benidorm on various days of the week, such as the Wednesday market up in the Folletis Sports Stadium area, just down from the tram station, which moves to behind the Bull Ring in the summer months, as well as the indoor municipal markets in both the Rincon de Loix and the heart of the Old Town, and of course other smaller markets too in the neighbouring districts and towns of La Cala, Altea and Alfaz del Pi, but none of them have the same extravaganza and huge variety of stalls in one place as the much famed Mercadillo de Benidorm. The redevelopment project, which is called Ensanche Levante Benidorm, involves some 560,000 square metres of land and is looking set to need an investment of €570 million to complete its impressive and ambitious plans. These include the creation of green spaces of over 61,500 metres squared, as well as the construction of 20 hotels and some 2,300 new homes, of which just over 1,500 will be for tourist use. Of the total, some 600 units will be put aside as subsidised housing, with the residential part of the development occupying about 10% of the total area. The project also proposes a large central park with wide avenues, pedestrianised passageways and lots of open spaces, and it wants to concentrate the building area into high-rise buildings of around 20 floors high, which will lead to a considerable reduction in land occupation by the structures. This will mean that a significant reserve of land will be left for public facilities and municipal green infrastructure, including 21,000 square metres for teaching uses, on which the necessary buildings for the schooling of the future population can be erected. Although the project will no doubt take years in total and be rolled out phase by phase over a period of time, I think it sounds like a great use of currently unused and deserted wasteland, which you can see as we're walking further and further along this lane. The controversy, however, comes into play when you see how many people are living along this particular stretch of road apparently illegally, to all intents and purposes squatting in abandoned villas and houses, with the area becoming a bit of a no-go zone after dark, and if I'm honest, in the daytime too, as well as being full of litter, debris, graffiti and overgrown countryside, along with a good amount of fly tipping as well. This zone is known as Armanello, which has been classed by the authorities as urban and developable land since 1990, and back in mid-May last year, a huge fire started on a plot of land in this sector, filling everyone in Benidorm at the time with concern on the afternoon into evening of Tuesday the 16th. Although the fire was not initially large, it soon spread, and the columns of dense black smoke that it caused covered the high-rise skyline of the resort for many hours. Maybe you were here. As the hours ticked by, Councillor for Security, Lorenzo Martinez, pointed out that pending the conclusions of the investigation, the evidence obtained on the ground and the images collected suggested that the fire could have had several sources, which later on led to online conspiracy theories that these fires had been set on purpose to get the inhabitants out and prepare the land for the project ahead, or that maybe they had simply come about as a result of the unlawful inhabitants wiring up illegally to the electricity lines overhead. Will we ever know? Whilst English social media sites about Benidorm went wild with videos of firefighters and fire trucks on the ground and a helicopter and seaplane buzzing overhead trying to fight the blazes, on Spanish sites there was footage of the so-called gypsies complaining that the emergency services hadn't arrived quickly enough and had left the area to burn for over an hour and a half before attending the scene. As I say, these are all things I saw and read about myself at the time, and what truth there was behind any of the claims I simply couldn't say, and probably the truth will never come out. In the early evening, the fire was considered stabilised, although it still remained active. The flames forced the evacuation of many of the nearby houses in the area as a precaution, with the roads closest to the blazes being cut off to traffic for security purposes. The last time I took this walk was well over a year ago now, when I was expecting to see scorched earth and blackened buildings all around, but in reality there's just lots of sandy dust and debris everywhere as usual, with very little outer damage visible. But then, if so much greenery, rubbish and waste was all burnt to cinders, I guess all traces of the fire would now have disappeared. This long winding lane did, however, used to be very enclosed and claustrophobic, surrounded on both sides by lots of overgrown hedges and trees, and was really only used by the gypsies who lived here, or as I previously mentioned, by locals who needed a quick shortcut in their car to get down from the top road into the Rincon de Loix. But now, as you can see, it's almost desert-like and wide open to anyone who passes by. However, I wouldn't recommend taking it as an afternoon stroll yourself, as it's still a pretty filthy area, and the occupants who have remained and managed to move further up to the houses that are still habitable do not take kindly to passing visitors, especially those who may be filming like me, which I can vouch for, as I was shouted at more than once as I walked along this road, which of course I had every right to, with it being a public highway, at least for pedestrians. I can only presume that when the Ensanche Levante plan does commence with fervour, as it surely will, that all of the houses and villas that remain will have their inhabitants evicted by the authorities. And if the general local consensus that the gypsies living in these homes are squatters turns out not to be true, and that some of them do provide papers to prove they own them, I can only think that a compulsory purchase order will come into place, as this region of the Comunidad de Valencia has somewhat of a checkered past in respect to land grabbing, as it's usually referred to, and that the multi-million euro project will proceed without fail. The flames of the May 2023 Gypsy Lane fire apparently started on a plot of land quite far away from the houses in this area, but as the blaze gained strength, the main concern was how close the fires were to the Repsol distribution warehouse, which we'll see at the 11-minute mark. The firefighters of the Alicante Provincial Consortium worked tirelessly to extinguish the fire, which happened to be the second in the Armeneo area in 2 days, with a fire having been caused in an abandoned vehicle in the same area just 24 hours before, fueling suspicions that the fire was intentional. The next day, May the 17th, it was happily announced that there was no one injured in the blaze, nor any properties damaged, and Benidorm's Mayor Tony Perez praised the rapid and accurate action of the regional fire department, who received additional support from provincial and regional forces, as well as air resources via a helicopter and a seaplane, along with the Benidorm local police and the National Police Corps. The mayor affirmed that the fire did not entail a serious risk, although it was very spectacular, and stressed that the priority of the extinguishing was that the fire did not affect any home, which was an objective that was successfully met. During the operation, several incidents caused by the presence of a drone in the area of the fire were detected, which made the job even more difficult and put the aerial means fighting the fire at risk. Thanks to the technology available to the local police air unit, however, it was possible to detect and intercept the device, as well as identify its owner, who was then arrested and reported to the Spanish Aviation Safety Agency, and rightly so. Despite all this high drama and the fabulous new planned project, I have always liked this gentle stretch of countryside for what it is, especially with the views out to the surrounding mountain ranges and the twitter of birds all around. However, it's also fair to say that I've never walked it alone and wouldn't feel particularly safe doing so either, and I did have company today as I videoed, so perhaps it's best that the wheels of change do roll on and that this unused and unprofitable space does bring great new homes, hotels and green spaces for all to Benidorm, so let's watch this space over the coming months and years and see what transpires. Adios for now, see you later, and hasta luego amigos. Cheers! Como un clavito en la pared, me dejaste solo.